Chaikin. I'm the director of the Center for the Arts at NJCU. And along with Heather Warfel-Sandler, who's the chair of the Jersey City Arts Council, we'd like to welcome you this evening. We're doing an earlier time because we have a resistance event that we hope you'll stay and have this be part 2 to our event this evening. We've been having really productive weekly calls, and this is going to be no exception. So tonight we have an amazing guest, Donna Walker Kuhne, who comes to us from NJPAC and from Walker International Communications Group. Donna is the Vice President of Community Engagement at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, and she founded Walker International Communications Group. Donna is charged at NJPAC with developing and creating and deepening relationships with communities through partnerships and special events. And she's really, we are so lucky to have her because every night everyone is calling her to speak because she's really an amazing expert on audience development, getting people talking and involved. So I'd like to welcome Donna Walker Kuhne.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And it's so great to see all of you. We are certainly in a very unique time, but it's also a great opportunity for us to create a new future. And I do hope that that's what we're thinking about. And so I wanted to spend a few minutes really talking about just what I see in the field, some action steps that I think we need to take in terms of, restoring, well, not even restoring, we never really had it, but creating more racial equity and, how we can really create that personally, as well as in our organizations as artists and as arts administrators. So let's begin. Okay, so. I'm a very action-oriented person, so I want to talk about what we can do, and those are the questions that I've been getting, particularly from white people. It's like, what can we do? How can we, address this? So I have some answers for that. Okay, we can continue. So I always like to frame everything in a philosophical context because things don't just dangle in the universe. What's happening to us is a result of causes that we've made, that have been made for 401 years. And so the first slide that I think is important to talk about is that now we all have the opportunity to become pioneers of a better age. So we're basically experiencing 2 pandemics. We have COVID-19 pandemic and we have the racism pandemic. So both of those actually are quite interconnected. And so, this is our opportunity to transform our condition and enhance, develop, and deepen our humanity. And so this is a quote from one of my mentors, Daisaku Ikeda. And he said, there's no other solution to the problem of racial discrimination than realizing the human revolution in each individual. In other words, an inner reformation in the depths of people's lives to transform the egoism that justifies the subjugation of others and replace it with the humanism that strives for coexistence among all people. So that's one bookend, that I look at and, try to ingrain in my work, but also encourage all of you to consider. And then the next slide has the other bookend that I truly believe is so clear. And for me, this is how we move forward in these 2 pandemics. And this is a quote from Arundhati Roy, who is a writer. And she says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. So this is where I am. I hope this is where you are, to absolutely think about, everyone's concerned about, we want to restore things back to where they were. Why do we want to do that? Certainly as an African American, I definitely don't, because that has never been an equitable place to live. And so now we get to see, how can we walk through life lightly? Meaning, how can we leave the racism, the entitlement, the privilege, all of those qualities that do not contribute to a positive way of life? How can we leave those behind us? Little luggage, and imagine another world. Imagine where everyone is treated equally, and so that the chains of slavery are able to be absorbed, understood, but also to be released. So that to me is the fight, ready to fight for that. And so I have some quotes from other leaders in the field, which is on the next slide, which, I'm sorry, these are some action steps that for us to kind of consider. So, what do we do to be able to transform our environment? There are very specific things that we can do. And of course, you are all aware of, what's going on. I think my blog has been posted that states kind of the state of things right now. We've seen an unprecedented number of protest marches worldwide. I was sharing with a friend today, this is the first time, in my 40 years working in the arts, that I have seen, such a global response to an injustice. It's not the first time we've seen a Black man murdered, but it's the first time it has elicited the kind of response that is worldwide, from everywhere, from doing the Haka in New Zealand to protest marches through the UK, to Lisbon protests in Israel. Even the Amish community in Pennsylvania came out of their tight community to sing gospel songs as a sign of support for Black Lives Matter. So this is going deep. This is a really deep effort. And I was speaking with my friend who said, well, we've had protest marches before, will the result be any different? Well, that's up to us. I do believe the result is different. The fact that we're having this discussion this evening, and it's one of thousands that are happening around the world, where there's a really concerted effort to unpack what can I do to change this experience? How can I be a change maker? And that to me is extremely profound. And so I'm quite hopeful when I think about what's next. There's been allocation of financial resources, and I mean in the millions, so that you have major corporations that are contributing $1 million to various social organizations. You have unprecedented number of statements of support by arts organizations as well as corporations stating, we stand with you. We will not allow this to happen anymore. We are now going to be conscious about the way we think. That's a start. So for me, we're at the starting line for a very long race, but we're at the starting line. And so that to me is quite, hopeful that there is this consciousness, there is an action step, there's public declarations, which then leads to accountability, and then, let's move. So that is quite extraordinary, I think. So action steps that I think, we can start to consider, and particularly, for various individuals and organizations who are looking for ways to demonstrate your support, or that you really want to be an ally, as well as African Americans who can use our current platforms, to be able to really be vocal about what we see and what we feel. I don't know if any of you have seen the letter that was distributed this morning by 400 African American theater artists who have written a letter to theater companies, directors, producers, owners, stating that what they've experienced over the years is now stopped. And they list very specific instances of behavior that has been discriminatory. So this is the first time that this group of people have really spoken out in writing, a very bold, dynamic writing. I'm also hearing from various colleagues in other theaters that their staff of color are writing letters to executive leadership stating, that we will no longer be marginalized. We will no longer accept this discrimination. So there's a voice that I've not seen before. And it is not a voice that's looking over the shoulder, worried about what the consequences will be. There are no consequences because now is the time that we have to really speak our truth. And we're prepared for whatever is the result because we know that without saying this, we continue to be part of the problem. And so action steps can include using the social media and online platforms to underscore your support of justice for the African American community and cultural institutions now and moving forward. So talk about it. Say, this is what we're doing, and make it continuous. Advocate to your funders and elected officials your stance for equitable funding for institutions of color. So speak out and say, are we making sure that the smaller companies or companies of color or artists of color have the same access to funding? And what does that look like? To create a radically welcoming space for not just select Black artists and works, but for all Black audiences beyond MLK weekend and Black History Month. So sometimes there's this, feeling that, we definitely embrace the Black community. We have a great MLK event. That is not the way to do that. That is not what we're interested in. We're interested in 360, all the time, feeling that this place is welcoming, that this place is my home. And it's not just for the artists that you selected who are safe, but it's for everyone. And it's for those who will ask questions and those that might make you uncomfortable. So lean into the uncomfortable. That's where the change is. None of this process is supposed to feel like eating cotton candy. No, it is very hard conversations, but without them, there'll be no positive results. So next slide. Continue to look at action steps. So these are things that you can do. Visit communities and institutions. Invest in our small businesses. Attend our events. Are you in your safety zone where you know the people and you might come out every now and then? But we're talking about changing the whole dynamic of how you live. So that means that you're coming into communities you're not familiar with, and that you might support arts organizations that you've not been to before, but with a curious and positive, demeanor. You will always be welcome. So it's not about being fearful of how will I be treated. Imagine for 401 years, that's how we've always been feel when we go into a different environment, a new space. It's always a question of how will I be treated. And so it's important for you to have that experience as well. Be the person who doesn't look like the majority of the people in a space and experience the power of that perspective, meaning go to a place with predominantly people of color and then understand what that's like. Because if the goal is to be an ally, the goal is to develop empathy, then at some point you have to kind of absorb and experience what that's like. Create reading groups, watch films about racism and social injustice together, followed by discussion groups. So there's a plethora of reading lists out now. I mean, my head is like dizzy. There's so many books, excellent books that are document, how to look at white fragility, how to look at racism, how to look at the injustice of over, this whole hundreds of years, but also books that talk about what we can do. And so, you can always have these reading groups, whether it's with your friends or at work, where once a week, you're actually discussing what this means and how it applies to you. Watch films about racism and then talk about that. I was in Moscow a few years ago, and I was doing a week-long series of workshops for Moscow theater directors, Russian theater directors, and primarily directors. And I was explaining to them how at NJPAC, we work very closely with our various community leaders, and the faith-based leadership had asked us to screen the film Selma, the one that had Oprah Winfrey in it, won the Oscar with John Legend and Common. And so they asked us to screen the film because they said so many of our youth ministry don't understand the civil rights legacy. They think everything started with Beyonce. We love Beyonce, but there was a few things happened before she was even born. So we need our young people to understand the history and legacy. So we did. We had buses to pick up these youth We had popcorn and soda for them, and then we had a really dynamic panel discussion afterwards. And so as I was explaining this to the Russian theater directors, one of them raised his hand and said, Donna, why do you keep using the word African American? Aren't you an American? And I was really taken aback. I looked at him like, doesn't he know? But he didn't. So that taught me, first lesson, not to assume people outside of the United States understand why we have the ethnic identity and the separation that comes from various historical events. And two, you know, that I have to take the time to educate them about the history of African Americans so that they have a context for what I'm speaking about. So that's exactly what I did. Okay, so the next day they came into the class and they were looking really sad, you know, their eyes were all red. I said, my gosh, did you guys go drinking? What happened last night? And they said, no, we watched the film Selma. Next time, start with the film Selma. So I learned that I have to, you know, put things in chronological order, not get ahead of myself, but more importantly, that once they understood just a little bit from watching the film, it gave them an empathy to be able to then hear more about the strategies and why we needed to do that. So I strongly encourage, this is a huge learning curve in front of all of us to really study and talk about what we learn. Next slide. And so other action steps: join social and civic groups that address social injustice. Membership in the NAACP, National Urban League, Black Lives Matter. There's numerous organizations, but put your footprint where you see change. So it's easy to sit back on the, you know, at home in front of our computer and write, you know, well, this is terrible. Oh boy, I wish this would change. But we have to take action, and the action is to be a part of the movement. And this is one of the ways to do that. Also, support and advocate for voter registration and voter participation on the local level. I know we're always looking at presidential, but frankly, we need to make sure who is our mayor, who's our senator's council, all of those roles are equally important. So you all have platforms where you can advocate for that so that we can make sure we elect officials who have the sense of humanity, who will care about all kinds of people. We have the opportunity to help control that through our voting power. So it's important that we use that. And then create opportunities for leadership by African Americans within your arts organizations. I was reading recently, Serena Williams' husband, you know, who's white, he gave up his board seat in his company, Reddit, social media company. He gave up his board seats to make sure that an African American could have that seat. I don't know if you have to give up your seat. I would have just added a chair myself, but I think that there has to clearly be opportunities we create for leadership, and that is sorely, sorely missing, particularly in the arts sector. You know, when we look at leadership around the country, you know, certainly it is dominated by, you know, whites. And what does that mean? That, you know, we can't trust Black Americans, they don't have the skill set, so then we train them. So you create a pipeline, you create mentorship. So each of you should have a person that doesn't look like you, that you're training to replace you. You know, that's how we start to change the face of these organizations. Okay, next slide. And most importantly, to not depend on people of color for your racial education. So instead of asking everyone, what should I do? What should I do? Take action. You know, read books, go on websites, watch films. You take action to see what can I do, you know, and that, you know, that sense of responsibility is really important. Accountability. So to whom and when? Okay, so we make these statements of declaration, you know, we're attending this, you know, conversation tonight. Who are you accountable to? You know, what's the result of this? And when? So I think that everything has to be on a timeline, because our grandchildren could inherit this conversation, but we don't have time. This has to change right now. And so I think we should all feel a sense of accountability. I know I do. It's like, what am I doing to help change this you know, pandemic? And so it's many things. It's, you know, by teaching, it's by writing, it's by membership, it's participation, it's advocacy, it's many things. So as an African American, you know, I'm not waiting for white people to change. I'm also contributing to what this change in culture should be. So everyone plays a role. And you want to be clear about what is it that you should be doing. Human evolution, this is a term that was coined by Mr. Toda, T-O-D-A, a Japanese philosopher, years ago in the 50s and 60s, when talked about, how do you transform the negative part of our lives? How do we transform that dark place, that prevents us from advancing? And we call that human revolution. And so it's a personal commitment, to really reflect on who I am, what are my biases, what words do I use, what do I say? And then to do that work consistently. So it's not like you take a pill and you wake up and everything's fine. Oh yeah, I got rid of that. No, it's a journey, and we constantly have to be mindful of, what are we saying? What is our behavior? How do we kind of marginalize, people in certain categories? And we don't even think about it because it's so much a part of our culture. So that's very important. And when do we begin? Right now. I would presume all of you have begun on some part of this journey, from either realization, actualization, consideration, but someplace on this timeline, we're moving forward. Next. So that is, just a summary, I think, of, where we are philosophically, what I believe is how we should think about it, and some suggested action steps for us to move forward. So now I'd like to hear from you. Any questions, comments?
If anyone would like to verbally comment, please raise your hand. In order to do that, you need to click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. And then there will be a blue hand button in the participants window. If you click that, that'll raise your hand for us and let us know that you want to talk. Also, feel free to say something in the chat if you are not comfortable speaking.
So I want to offer something that my friend is here today on this call. And he said something to me this afternoon that we're on another association, and he said that in the meeting that we had in this other association, he felt very hurt that we did not reach out to him and check and see how he was feeling when all of these things were going on. So he's got his hand up, so I can call on him, but I've unmuted.
I am in the process of unmuting him.
Okay, I think I'm now unmuted. Hi, my name is Edward Eloy, and I work for Ramapo College of New Jersey, where I've worked along with Stephanie, and for the Performing Arts Center. I'm also a member of a professional organization. I don't want to name them, for which I am on the board. I've been on the board for the past 5 years. And we have a meeting every Thursday now where we discuss issues concerning performing arts and the coronavirus. And so I was taken back when at our last meeting, and I've known friends. I've known everyone there for the past 5 years, and we have a good working relationship because we have a retreat once a year where we have happy hour. We go out, so it's a 2-day retreat. And so I was kind of taken back where no one said anything to me about what is currently going on with police brutality towards Black men and Black women,
right,
and people of color. And, I sat there and I was stunned the whole time that no one, I don't know if they were afraid to approach the subject. I don't know what it was, but I'm saying, these are people I know very well. At least say something to me. Say, Edward, you recognize that this must be a hard time for you. That's it. I would have said to them, you know what? Yeah, thank you very much for acknowledging that. And it would have been over, but I'm hurt and I'm dropping out of the organization because I realized that the level of friendship and the level of professionality that I thought I had with these folks, that it really doesn't exist. And that's one aspect. The other aspect is from your slides. I agree with the point that it's not our job to educate folks about what we're going through, because even when they do see the videos and the case go to court, and they usually will move it to an all-white section where all jurors are white, and the police officer will come out unscathed, you know? And I'm saying, how does that happen? You've seen the video. You clearly saw that the men died, but when they go to court, and I think it's not just with the police, it's also with the judicial system. It's with the judicial system that somehow they find a way to acquit these criminals. And lastly, I believe that the police, the KKK are no longer wearing white, but they're wearing blue.
That's
right. Okay? Yeah. So I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just expressing my thoughts and my feelings because I've cried when I saw that video. Because that could have been me. I have a son that could have been my son.
Of course.
You know, there's nothing that we can do, even when we're polite. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir.
That's right.
We still get treated that way. You know, I'll have my hands on the windshield, not on the steering wheel, on the windshield. Every black person can tell you that they had, I don't care who that person is. Every black person living in the United States of America can tell you that they have had a negative experience with the police. So come on, guys. You know? And that's what I said a little too much, but
no, but that's why I called on you because I took it to heart what you said.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for your words. Whether or not you decide to leave, that's your choice, but I hope you don't miss the opportunity to tell them why. That's so important.
I understand that. And you know what? I'm not only leaving for that reason, but that reason sort of anchored my reason for leaving.
I understand, but it's a teachable moment.
It is.
And then otherwise they missed and you missed. Yeah. So please take the time to really explain that clearly, just like you did. And you still got your suitcase out the door, so that's fine.
Yeah. I will speak to the president of the organization privately, and then if he wants me to address the whole group, I will.
Exactly.
I think that's the best way to go about it.
Perfect. And then regarding the lack of, fair adjudication, that's why I'm pushing so hard for voters registration, because that's how we ended up where we are today in the last election. So many people of color did not vote. How they felt about a certain person, and look what we got. And so we can't afford that
we can afford not this time.
To miss these. So that's why we have to really advocate to vote for the person that really represents humanity.
Yes.
So that's the other point. And then your last point about the KKK and the police officers, certainly we've seen the mentality of that. And that's something, again, that we have to be in the room to be able to question and demand change. I was on a call earlier today with Ryan Haygood. I don't know if you're all familiar with this organization, Institute for Social Justice.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it, yeah.
Incredible organization, and they're really advocating for so much legislation that will hopefully turn will create balance, for African Americans, as well as looking at economic resources. It's really incredible. So please take a look at what they're doing right here in Newark, New Jersey. Yeah.
And one last thing, if I may.
Absolutely.
What really shocked me is that this movement has become a global movement.
Oh, yes.
And here we are supposed to be the leaders of the world, preaching to other nations about human rights. Do you understand what I'm saying? We attacked Saddam Hussein because he was mistreating his people. We attacked Muammar Gaddafi because they claimed that he was abusing his people. We attack all these other nations because we want to bring democracy into these underdeveloped worlds. By the way, I'm Haitian born, so I know. I have my own experience, which is not part of this, but most importantly, I'm a black man. Because
Right.
when the police stop me, he doesn't see
Well,
whether I'm
because you're
Jamaican,
Haitian.
African, Haitian. He sees my color.
That's right.
And that's why I try to explain to everyone, every black person who's not US born, I said, the police doesn't care where you're from. They stop you because of your color. And trust me, I drive a very nice car.
Right.
So that's another issue
Well, you'll
that
be stopped for that. Yes.
I have. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll be quiet and listen to others now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, this is such a quiet group.
I know.
Who's here? My gosh.
We have Dare.
I see raised hands.
I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, Dare, you're
Hi.
on.
It's Dare.
Sorry, Dare.
You good? Thank you, Donna, so much for this presentation. You know, you're just saying the things we need to hear. You're just saying the things we need to hear, and it's very appreciative. I just want to kind of speak on to what Edward was just talking about, and essentially, don't overthink it. Like, if someone's your friend and you care about them, just reach out to them. And we need to be careful that we need to be careful about this, either reaching out now because Black Lives Matter or deciding to not reach out to be hypersensitive. I think that perpetuates this whole thing of like, you cannot see a Black person fully. So if you care about somebody and they're Black, just reach out to them. It's that simple. And I love everything you're saying about these institutional changes that need to be happening. But I feel like sometimes when we start thinking about institutional changes, we like actually miss the people. And I to think about the people who are in our organizations, who are in your organizations. I don't have one. Who are in your organizations, like, how have you done them wrong? You probably have, even if you don't know. Like, how have you done them wrong? Like, what apologies do you owe them? Like, what money do you owe them for the labor that they've been doing? Like, what policies have they asked you to change in the past? Like, I feel like it's very important to start with the people who have been speaking up, have been, whether it's small or large, like, have been talking to you about things. Like, let's start with them, like the people that you've maybe ignored, and maybe it's like a little harder to ignore because the whole world is up in uproar. Like, reaching out to those people, understanding that what they were saying was valid, and providing them with time and support. I also really appreciate what you're saying about giving Black artists more opportunities and more space.
Yes.
And I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't really have an organization, but when I think about these things, I'm just kind of like, what can we do right now? Just literally pay people to go out there. Like, our institutions are normally in communities, and the people in those communities normally don't really, they don't get to take advantage of it the way most of us do. Just reach out, literally go door to door. Like, it's not that deep. Like, yeah, we can go door to door. You can pay people to do it. Like, if you have staff and they're supposed to be doing things about like pushing forward the ideas of your organization, pay people, go door to door, knock on the door. Hey, you live here? We're an art institution that lives in your neighborhood. What's good? Would you like to be part of this? Would you like to have a conversation? We can make up advisory boards of people in the community. Invite them over. They might say, no, go give them a try. You can posters, like, if there are local arts events, like, let's go and see them. Let's go and see them. Let's pay to go and see them. Let's be generous. It's like,
yes, pay to go and see. Yes.
Community has to be able to trust you. I feel like that's also another huge part. Like, if you're just coming to terms now with what's been going on, I don't trust you. So how will your community trust you? I feel like that's also a big part to what this is, and I really appreciate that you reminding us that like this is a really beautiful start / not start. But it's like a really beautiful like resurgence of this idea that like Black lives actually do matter in many ways, more than just like our right to hold breath. It's also our right to live wholeheartedly.
Yes.
I feel like, so even outside your organization, like if you have Black folk in your life, reach out. Genuinely, like think about the ways that you have probably like created microaggressions towards them. I feel like that's really important. I'm starting to feel, and talking to many people, that there's a intergenerational thing happening, and I feel like we need to open up lines of communication for the youth, for the elders and everybody in between. I feel like I'm talking in groups and everybody little, you know, or everybody's around my age, or everybody's like older. It's like I want to start seeing more integration of the different generations, because I feel like the goal is not replication. We're not trying to replicate what like the generations have been doing, but the goal is to like add the unique knowledges of our time. That's kind of what I want to say. I'm really happy, you know, I've never been a part of this. It's so cool. I saw an email and I was, you know, let's get into it. And I said, thank you so much for your presentation. It was actually so like, it was beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. First of all, absolutely intergenerational. The conversations have to embrace our millennials in particular, because I know that in a lot of the protest marches, that's who's been leading these marches. So clearly your voice is imperative to the success of what we want to see changed. Your recommendations of how to engage communities, that's exactly what the work that I do. That's the work that we've done at NJPAC. We created a community engagement department. And so our department, that's all we have to do, is to engage who's right next to us and to go and literally go visit. And then we created advisory councils. We have ambassadors so that there's a sense of ownership and that they're brought into who we are, what we do, their voice, their recommendations, those things, critical. And yes, I think it takes courage to do that. I think it takes courage to go places where you don't know anyone or how you're going to be received. But if the art is leading the way, you have nothing to worry about. You know, we are warriors for the art. So we put on our cloaks and we'll go wherever we need to go. And so that is the demeanor that I think we have to bring with us as we are, you know, building new relationships. And you're absolutely right. If we're in various neighborhoods and the audiences does not reflect the community we're in, one, we're missing an opportunity, and two, we're making a big mistake. Because in terms of the sustainability of any arts organization today, it is through community engagement. It is through the people who are right in front of you, especially in pandemic number 2. You know, because when we think about what will the arts audiences look like a year from now, you know, I was just on a call, we were talking with Steve Wolf. Steve Wolf is one of the country's leading analysts and researchers for arts organizations. And he was reporting on surveys that he's been doing with audiences around the country. And what they're saying, what it will take for them to come back to their spaces, to the theaters, to the art centers. And there's a long list. And so just thinking about practically, what are we going to be putting on our stage? Because it has to be safe, not only just for the audience, but for the actors too. You know, you think about Broadway, they're really struggling with, okay, how do we put this together? Dressing rooms are like this. The orchestra pit, we're like this. And we have to do 6 feet social distance. What does that look like? You know, so then how do we monetize what we're accustomed to being able to, you know, make a certain level of income? Now we're talking about, the first performing arts center is opening in Texas next week. And it's an 1,800 seat theater, but they're only going to let in 350 people because they've got to do the 6 feet per. So what does that do to your bottom line? So this is a time of, like I read from the quote before, create a new era. This is the time we have to leave some of this luggage behind and create a new way of how we do business. How do we decide what success looks like? And how do we eat? You know, we're still going to be able to eat and live our lives in some kind of quality. And so in order to do that, we need to embrace everyone who's around us, not just the ones who maybe hold the title of CEO, but who else is right here in front of us that can help inform what that looks like. So yes, now is the time for us to open the door and see who's next door, who's in front of us, and go and meet them and talk and have a heart-to-heart dialogue. Absolutely. This has never been a time more clear than today. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We have a question in the chat. It is, for an arts organization, what direct political activity do you either suggest or foresee in terms of participation in the current protests, the immediate policy changes that are being debated, and the presidential election as we enter into convention, vice president selection, and platform creation season, and then after Labor Day when this election really heats up?
Ooh, that's quite a question. So arts organizations by nature are apolitical because we receive funding from many different sources. And I think we have to be very sensitive to that. At the same time, you know, there are opportunities where we can speak whatever our belief is. And so at NJPAC, you know, we try to be extremely sensitive to the fact that our donors, our board members, and some of our staff are of different political parties. And so being respectful of that, but we also, you know, use some opportunities where we may have to speak out about just blatant injustice or what we feel that is. And so I think that in terms of the current protest movement, you know, it's from where I sit, it's definitely anti-Republican. It's certainly anti who's in the White House right now, I'll put it that way. And that perpetuates the kind of anger and entitlement that has allowed things to kind of fester to where they are now. That's the sentiment, I think, behind much of the protest movement today. And so this, again, I'm advocating to register, make sure people are registered to vote, so you do have a say at the table as to who do you think should be the best person that can represent. No one's going to be perfect because we're humans, but who will at least advocate for humanity? You know, what does that look like? And I think we have to be extremely active about that. How aggressive can arts organizations be? I think that's up to discussion with your board, you know, because those are your policymakers, you know, as well as your staff in terms of where do you think you can go? What is your footprint? You know, and so that's a decision that you can discuss. But I think it means do something. You know, and it may be, you know, advocacy with organizations you believe in that you think are supporting in that way. So it's delicate, but it's extremely important. And I think we have to be bold, respectful, but we have to be bold and speak our truth. Yeah. And that's for now, and certainly increasing as we get closer to Labor Day and when the election season heats up. Yes, it's going to be quite something over these next few months, because we'll have all of this, you know, Floyd, I'll have all of this that's going to inform who do we see is going to protect the rights of people. So please make sure your voice is heard and at the table.
The other thing I kind of see in this opportunity of the COVID pandemic, because everything's shut down, all the plans of having some of the season's shows are like gone. So we're starting from scratch to create a new programming, and maybe some of the programming or all of the programming that has to happen addresses the issues that are at hand. So that's in terms of an arts organization's choices, that gives us an opportunity right there. So
that's an excellent point, Stephanie. Yes. So that goes back to my quote. Do we have to drag all that stuff with us? Or can we just one suitcase and let's see what that looks like? Because to ignore it is exactly how Edward felt. You know, it's like, how could you see me and act as if nothing happened? So I don't believe as artists that we can ignore the pain and suffering that is so clearly blatant today and continues. You know, every time I read CNN, there's another Black person that was shot or yanked out the car or something. So it didn't stop. And so how can art respond to that? That is your mission. That is something every artist should be looking at. How can I respond to this? Either my work, what I say, my advocacy, where I am. I'm on the board of the Harlem Week organization, and we have been extremely aggressive in this pandemic number one, COVID-19. And so as artists, we have made a commitment to take care of our village of Harlem. And so we had a Harlem GoFundMe campaign. Our goal was 100,000. We've raised over 300,000 in cash and services. With that money, we have provided meals to 2,000 families every single day for the past 2 months. We have provided laptops, computers, other instruments for students to be able to keep up with their homework, because not everybody got one. We have arranged delivery service for medicine and food for our seniors who can't get out. We are on the Black media to make sure we are educating our community about what is COVID-19, how can this be, transmitted, what things should I be aware of. You know, so those are things we're on the ground every day, making sure, you know, that we're taking care. So as artists, this is what we do. Then we have a town hall meeting every 2 weeks with the Manhattan Borough President, Gail Bureau. And we bring in funders to talk about, this is where you can apply for a grant. Call this person. Let's get the, you know, this group. And that, so that we're educating our artists. How can we be sustainable during this period and beyond? And so no one gets to sit back and just watch. No one gets to do that. If we're an artist, then we should act like that. Arts have always made sure that the narrative continues, regardless of who's alive or dead. That narrative always goes through, and that's how we understand the history of mankind. So what are we gonna do now? So here we are, you know, 2020, are we gonna stop? Are we gonna just let things happen? No way. We should be number one. Artists should be number one, advocating for justice. That's our mission.
Absolutely.
I believe Heather wanted to chime in with something.
Yes.
Hey, thanks, Donna, and thanks, Edward and Dare and everyone for chiming in. I just wanted to underscore one thing you said for people like myself who are trying our best to participate and be active about just being willing to be uncomfortable. Like even right now, I'm nervous. I want to make sure everyone knows that, you know, where I stand. It can be scary. And I think in the times that I have hopefully been successful, it's just get over it. Don't, you know, get over your own discomfort. And I also have found that just asking questions, if you're like not even sure, like to Dare's point, what do I say when I text my friend? I'm thinking about them, I'm worried about, but then just ask, is there, you know, what can I say or what can I do? So that's just something that stood out to me. I know Caitlin at Smush Gallery has a couple of things she's working on. I don't know if you want to share those, Caitlin.
What's her name on the call so I can unmute her? Oh, did we unmute her? Is she in?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, everybody. This is Caitlin. And, you know, in response to the events of the last couple of weeks, there are some specific initiatives that are getting started at the gallery, and they might be of interest to everybody who's here. So one thing is that this Thursday, and then every Thursday in June, and probably continuing after that, the gallery is working with Rabbi Bronwyn Mullen of B'nai Jacob to host what we're calling White Space, Conversations for Anti-Racism. And those conversations are for white identified people who are looking for support in undoing racism and working with themselves to kind of get this toxic material of racism out of our own bodies so that we can show up as the best allies that we possibly can. And that's just, I mean, those are obviously free, and it's just through a Zoom link that's on the gallery website. And that's Thursday at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7:30. And we'll share a little bit more about that. And for anybody who might be curious, who maybe isn't familiar with the idea of a white space or why it might be important to meet as a group of white people, there is a link on the gallery website that's from an organization in Los Angeles. And it's just it directly addresses the question so beautifully, why meet as a group of white people in pursuit of anti-racist work? So that's one of the things that we're doing immediately. And then the second thing is that we're putting together, you know, we say like, oh, it's Smush, but anybody who's familiar with the organization knows that pretty much the decision-making falls to me. And as a single person, as an individual, and also as a cis white woman, my perspective is necessarily limited by my own experience. And so I'm in the effort of broadening the kind of viewpoint of the gallery. We're assembling a BIPOC steering committee that will meet quarterly. Ideally, this committee would operate fairly independently from me, but meet with me, not as a way to displace the anti-racist work, but just to expand the perspectives around that. So if you or someone you know is interested in joining that committee or in chairing it, then I would love to talk to you. And I'll put both my email address and the website in the chat in case you'd like to follow up on that. And if you have any questions about any of the things that we're doing, then I welcome your comments at that same email address that I'll put there. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Fantastic. Taking action. Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Wow.
I actually have something that I wanted to contribute. I almost never contribute on these calls. I just moderate them. But I thought of an experience of my own that kind of emphasizes something that you spoke about getting people of color in leadership positions in theater. Everywhere, but in theater, because there's a lack of it. So
Yeah.
when I was a junior in college, I was invited by the head of my theater department in the college to attend I don't recall the type of event. It was like a theater benefit or something. It had like 15 to 20 tables of board members of different theaters around the state. And I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I get to go to this. I'm so thrilled. And I went, and I was shocked by what I saw. The only brown people there were his theater, including myself, and the servers. Every other theater, every single board member was white.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him, like I looked at the crowd, I looked at him and I said, are we the only brown people here? And he looked at me, he saw that I was upset and said, unfortunately, yes.
Mm.
And I went home and I cried. And I called my mother and I said, is there a space for me in theater?
Mm.
I didn't know if there was a space for me in theater. And just so you know, the timeline, that was 2018. I am only 23 years old. That is not long ago. That is so recent. I think it is very important that we try to get people of color in leadership roles so that way another college student doesn't have an experience like I did, where she goes home and cries because she didn't see any leadership that was brown other than this one theater that specifically puts on works by people of color for people of color. It felt like we were the token table at
Right.
the event.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, like I'm like, what is happening here? I was so distraught by it. And it's just such an important point. I just thought it was a story that could maybe put things into perspective for some people in case they didn't understand why it was important.
Mm.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you. I know that scenario very well. Many times I am the only in the room, and I'll comment on that. Said, how is it possible in this year, at this time, in this era, I'm the only person? Couldn't find anyone else. You didn't. And then there's the safety thing. Okay, so you get the one black person that you know what they're going to say, how they look, how they dress, and you keep just rotating that same one around. So I will ask on this group to make sure that's not you. Make sure that's not you. And that I know, like for instance, with Broadway shows, they'll make sure opening night is very diverse and they got all these other people there. But on a regular basis, where are they? So we kind of have to stop the hype. As I've been saying these past few days, the Band-Aid is off. So we've just ripped off. Okay, so now we need to be honest and we need to really look at what am I doing and be thoughtful about everything when you're casting roles, for a theater part, for dance, not just relegate the black person to the black role, but we can do anything. We can do everything, and then of course, as you were looking at long-term planning, and, to make sure you're being thoughtful about making sure that this pipeline is strong, it's in place. And so, yes, I think we have to continue to speak out. Sabrina, you have to keep talking about this. Place yourself in environments where you can be heard, and you speak with confidence and kindness, always. But we have to be heard. So thank you for sharing that. Tell your mom we got you.
I will, thank you. It looks like we have a hand up from Jersey City Theater Center. I'm gonna unmute you.
That's probably our last one, right? 6:54.
There we go, you're unmuted, Olga. Oh, never mind. Someone, I think she got unmuted and then remuted. Hold on, Olga.
There you go.
I'll just say thank you so much. Thank you, Donna. It's very, and special is that you spoke about Moscow, and I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant from Belarus, and the way we perceive and see everything, and I'm artistic director of Jersey City Theater Center. So the social justice in the very foundation of our mission, because when I came here, even with my African-American friends that accepted me, when I didn't even speak English. So when I went to acting school, when I went back to theater, when I went back to college, all my friends across the border were African American. And I was like, it's gonna be a part of my mission. So we have our board president is African American. I always work with Stephanie, and I concentrate on that issue. But I would like to ask you this question: how do you see how? Because I'm very honest. So with my African American friends, I speak without that history, without any kind of guilt, because I come from a country where it's not a part of our history.
Right.
Would you make, and sometimes it can be a little conflict because I'm not careful with, you know, I don't have that history. I don't carry that, but I'm always honest. And sometimes it can be for maybe a little discomforting. Like I will tell
For you or for them?
For both parts, because we like I said, even with my friend from college, I remember passing Greenville and I wanted to stop and ask for directions. It's African American community, and she said to me, "No, you're not stopping here." And I'm like, "Why not?" And she said to me, "Well, look at these people around." And I said, "What's wrong with these people? I never had problems with African American. You African American.
Right.
How can you say that?" And I stopped my car. I asked for direction. Gentlemen helped us out. And till we drove downtown, we both were quiet.
You drove downtown?
Yeah, downtown. And we didn't talk for the rest of the ride because it was her.
Yes.
Who didn't want to stop, but
yeah,
I never had this experience maybe that she had when I felt in danger in certain neighborhoods. So the way,
it may not have been danger, it may have been embarrassment, it may have been fear, may not always have just been danger. You know, we get uncomfortable when we're with white people sometimes, and we're in an environment with Black people. We're not sure how to navigate that or what we may be called. You know, I was married to a white man for 25 years, and my daughter is biracial. And so, you know, we were often in environments where Black people were like, "What happened to you? What's your problem? Why did you marry a white man? You couldn't," you know, all of that. And so, you know, as a Black person, sometimes we create this armor to protect ourselves and maybe the white person with us, because we really don't want to be bothered at that moment because we made a decision that this person is okay. And it's like, how do you even say that? Where's the room to even say that? But, you know, she's fine. Don't worry about it. We got this. You know, so there could be the multitude of reasons why she may have responded that way. But I would suggest that you ask her to talk about it, and you say, you know, I was just, you know, wondering what was that about? Because this is how I felt. And I want to respect how you felt, but I want to understand how you felt. This is why dialogue is so important. When those things hang in the middle, it creates no value. It has to land. And so we have to be brave enough for it to land and say, look, we're friends. I need to know what's in your heart. This is what's in my heart. You know, we have to say that, be bold enough to say that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Can't hear you. You're on mute. You're muted.
I unmuted you, Olga.
I tried. I asked her and she said she doesn't want to talk about it.
Okay, then we respect that. Then something happened. Something happened. So we'll respect that. Okay, but for you to understand that there are also boundaries. And just because I don't have this history of this and, you know, I don't know what this meant, doesn't mean that you have to push to get an answer. Sometimes you can, not at that time. So, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Olga. So we have a couple more people. The reason that we're close to ending now is because there is a part 2 of this. There's a resistance event that starts at 7 and the link is in Zoom. It's so popular that hopefully you can still get in because we tried to register more people and had trouble. But that being said, Bryant and Dare had something to say. So let's start with Bryant.
I will keep this really quick. I kept notes. Edward, I think part of the reason why people didn't say anything, what I'm finding is that a lot of our friends or people that are going through the same thing, they don't know what to say. So they're not saying anything. And so it's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't know, that they're not concerned. They just don't know how to broach the conversation because they are broken up about it. They're like kind of fragile in this space and don't want to offend. And that kind of feeds into what Heather was talking about. And because I know Heather and I know her heart and I know how loving and how feeling she is, for Heather not have the words is like an anomaly.
Right.
Because she is such a loving and caring and open person that you have to know her spirit to know that this is something that is truly affecting everyone and making us uncomfortable, for her to not be able to just jump into the conversation and like devour it. So it's just something that we're all going through and that we have to be kind of present and aware that it's just a difficult time. And it's something that this is like this dirty little secret that we've all known about that has been exposed. And we are talking about things that like ripping off this Band-Aid and exposing a sore that we've all known about. And so we are kind of working our way through it. As far as like being the only Black person in the room, even in Jersey City, the most diverse city in the country, I deal with it all the time in the art scene. So the person that the art gets rotated from place to place, I'm one of those people. So, but what I've done to try and kind of combat that is have a seat at the table and try to make sure that I show up at events and be part of the conversation and say to other artists, Black, yellow, green, brown, whatever, this is a community for us. It is about the art, it is about the color of the art, not the color of our skin, and try and bridge the conversation that way. But I'm, at the end of this month, become the co-president of Pro Arts. And that is the reason why I wanted to have a seat at the table so that conversations like this become easier. It just so happens that it comes at a time that race is like the dessert or the entree at the table. You know, it just happened that way. And so that's just part of it. I just want to say this comes at a time, I'm not saying that the door is open, but I think it's a time where the door is at least unlocked. We just need to walk through the door. Don't get uncomfortable. We are all uncomfortable. This is the time not to shy away from it. Talk about those things that make you uncomfortable. We do all have our prejudices and our bias the things that make us uncomfortable. Talk about it. This is the way that we get through it and get past it. Talk about the things that make you uncomfortable when you see a group of guys, whether they're white or black, coming towards you that make you uncomfortable. Once we figure out what it is, that deep stuff that makes us uncomfortable, we can get past it. That's it.
Wow. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. I agree with you 5,000%. Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dare?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking again. Just feel very connected to what Sabrina, you talked about in your experience of coming into a space, and Brian, you're talking about this a little bit too, and feeling like, whoa, I'm alone, essentially. And I'm hearing some people talk about, programming and hiring, diversity hiring. And I just want to bring to light that tokenism and diminishing a person's full humanity, it's very violent and it's very dangerous. And I think that happens a lot when the quick fix is to be like, we'll just bring them into the space. I feel like if you're gonna bring people into space, like give them opportunities to institute change in their own way. And I feel like that to really allow them to be a part of the situation. Because, a Black artist is still an artist, and we don't want to coerce their art to being something so that you understand that it's about something, because life is full and people can express it in many, many different ways. And for some people, cooking is activism, you know what I'm saying? And so does that mean, they don't get a chance to perform? And I feel like that kind of happens a lot, and it's just something I feel like we should just be careful about. I feel like the work that we're looking for requires experimentation. I think we all have to experiment because we have not really seen it actually happen successfully before. Equality. Right. I also feel like, and to what you're saying, Brian, about being at the table, I also want us to start thinking about having our own table.
That's right.
Having our own table. And, currently I'm daydreaming about worker cooperatives and how that could work for our communities, and just like doing the work to imagine new ways in which we support ourselves and in which we support the arts. It's not fully working the way it's working right now. People are in pain. I'm so glad you brought up the stuff about the board and where donors are coming from and where money's coming from, because when I'm talking to people, these are not the things that we are thinking about or know to think about, and I just wonder what it looks like to reach out to them and say, hey, can we also have a conversation? I don't want to pee too much, but are you down to at least talk about it? Hey, yeah. I have some thoughts, and since you're the one who's funding me, I think you should hear my thoughts. I think
absolutely. Yes, you should.
And yeah, that's kind of what I want to add to that. I also, I'm hearing, I can't remember your name, but you're the one who's from Belarus. I'm running the Jersey.
That's Olga.
Olga. Okay, Olga. No, I just kind of want to speak to what you're saying. It's complicated, and people and feelings get hurt, and feelings get hurt. And also, this is kind of in talking about what you're talking about, Caitlin, about like a white group. I feel like a part of the time that you spend in that work, I feel like it's important to tap into self and to think about where it's coming from me. But I think sometimes you just have to remember, you just have to know it's not about you. Sometimes that's a big part of it. Like when you're dealing with someone who's like struggling with the traumas of racism in this country, it's just not about you. It's just so deep. It's just so deep, and it's not. People are not trying to push you away. People are not trying to not be heard or be misunderstood. It's just deep. And it requires like a lot of time and a lot of care. And I really encourage that about these like white groups that I'm hearing about. Because when I first hear white group, I get scared. It can't not happen. Maybe one day I'll be like, okay, but for now it's just like fear, because who knows what happens there. But just to remember, sometimes make it not about you. And even though that seems so wild, there's so many times where it's just not about us and we're right there. You know what I'm saying? Like we're right in the midst and it's just not about us. And I feel like that is the experience that you might need to tap into to fully start to what's the word, empathize.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Look at me. Yes, you raised some very important points. Thank you.
So Donna, thank you so very much. You are amazing. We're bringing you back multiple times coming up.
Oh, I want to just make one note. I'm not Vice President of Community Engagement. I am a consultant at NJPAC, and I am Senior Advisor for Community Engagement. Just to clarify that. I was, but I have many other constituents that I like to take care of, so I get to move around.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
You're
Well, we're going to bring you in at NJCU to lead a leadership workshop. So we will hope that everyone comes to that also.
Okay.
And our, Heather, do you have some announcements?
Sorry, just real quick, don't forget that the arts relief grants are the applications are opening next week. So if you go to the EDC website, the Arts Council will be sending out a newsletter. So I'm assuming most of you are on that list, but just want to remind you that's happening next week. Thanks, everybody.
Wow.
Please join us on the link for the resistance event that's happening now. Please join us for that. And Donna, we can't thank you enough. So
my pleasure. I will be watching. I expect to see change. Okay, let's all make it happen. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. We have recorded this and the chat. We will email everything to Heather, so you can email Heather and ask her for copies.
Great.
They're on the website actually. So if you go to the Jersey City Arts Council website, there's a tab and you can see all the past meeting chats and videos.
Have a great night.
We will be leaving this call open for a little bit so anyone can get any documents from the chat that they need.
And please feel free to subscribe to my blog because I write about everything that I spoke about. So you're welcome to it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.